Evaluating a potential partner is a massive computational challenge. To assess whether someone is a viable match, we require extensive data about their genetic fitness, social status, and psychological competence. The problem is that human genomes and bank accounts are invisible from across a crowded room. Therefore, we desperately need a way to condense all of that hidden information into a single, observable signal. To solve this information deficit, human evolution developed the thin slice heuristic. We instinctively extract massive amounts of data from narrow windows of observation, using brief initial interactions to accurately predict a person's long-term viability. Pop culture often frames this initial interaction as a learned tactic. We picture the smooth-talking date doctor, treating romantic success as a script you can memorize, or a persona you can adopt with enough practice. The scientific literature identifies confidence as a high-fidelity biological and psychological broadcast. It serves as an outward metric of an individual's internal stability. Psychologists categorize this internal tracking system as the mating sociometer. It operates entirely below conscious awareness, constantly taking inventory of your traits, your social standing, and your resilience, and calculating whether you actually possess the resources required to survive and successfully maintain relationships. We are attracted to confidence because it acts as an evolutionary shortcut. It relies on the rigorous math of the sociometer to reduce the extreme biological risk of choosing an unfit partner. The accuracy of this internal sociometer relies on hard data, and that data gathering begins at a structural genetic baseline, long before any social interaction ever takes place. A clear example of this biological bedrock was isolated by life scientists at UCLA, who identified a direct link between psychological coping resources and a specific sequence of DNA known as the oxytocin receptor gene, or OXTR. The OXTR gene dictates how the brain processes oxytocin, a hormone intricately tied to social behavior, empathy, and the physical response to stress hormones. When researchers mapped the gene, they found a critical variation at a single location. Individuals carry either an A, adenine, variant, or a G, guanine variant at the specific coordinate. Plotting these genetic variants on a comparative data chart reveals a stark behavioral divergence. Subjects possessing the double G nucleotide configuration registered substantially higher baseline levels of optimism, self-esteem, and mastery, the belief that they have control over their own lives. Conversely, the presence of an A nucleotide reliably correlated with elevated depressive symptoms and stress sensitivity. The correlation is highly significant, documented thoroughly in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The presence of specific nucleotides physically shapes how effectively an individual navigates adversity. A distinct portion of what observers evaluate as confidence is actually the outward projection of this genetically inherited baseline. It is a biological capacity for stress management, hard-coded into the receptor molecules. Genetics provide the baseline, but navigating a complex mating market requires real-time data processing. This is where evolutionary psychology introduces Leary and Baumeister's sociometer theory. Sociometer theory defines self-esteem as a survival gauge monitoring our interpersonal relationships. It tracks social inclusion and calculates relational value in real time. A study out of the University of Huddersfield expands on this, demonstrating how the sociometer acts specifically to calculate an individual's distinct mate value. Looking at this conceptual model of the sociometer's dashboard, we start with two specific input nodes: self-perceived facial attractiveness and bodily attractiveness. The brain continually logs how others respond to these physical traits and feeds that data into the system. But those physical inputs do not translate directly into global self-esteem. The data streams must first pass through a central mediating filter labeled romantic self-confidence, a specific calculation of the individual's actual ability to establish and maintain a romantic relationship based on those physical traits. The system finalizes the equation only when that romantic confidence filter confirms relational eligibility. Once confirmed, the sociometer outputs the final stabilized metric, global self-esteem. Social confidence, therefore, is the psychological output of a subconscious mathematical equation. It proves that the brain has audited its own physical and social assets and verified its viability in the mating market. Having high internal self-esteem serves no evolutionary purpose if that data remains trapped inside the brain. The sociometer must broadcast its findings to potential mates in the external environment. To transmit this information, the sociometer alters the body's physical geometry. Looking at this wireframe model, we see how the data translates into high-trust signals: exact cervical alignment pulling the posture upright, an expanded chest cavity, and a sustained level eyeline. According to the American Confidence Institute's framework, this open posture physically exposes the torso and neck. It clearly communicates an active embrace of vulnerability and a total lack of fear regarding the immediate environment. Observers instinctively trust these signals because they represent a costly signal. Maintaining this level of physical vulnerability under the social pressure of an interaction requires the efficient stress regulation provided by the OXTR genetic baseline. These physical cues act as observable proof of that internal resilience. We are attracted to them because they provide a visible window into an individual's capacity to handle high-stakes social stress without triggering a defensive response. This creates a paradox. If genuine confidence requires such a rigorous foundation, why do people fake it? And from an evolutionary standpoint, why does overconfidence persist at all? Data from the Society for Personality and Social Psychology demonstrates that overconfidence carries immediate penalties. When individuals claim familiarity with non-existent concepts or overestimate their intellectual performance, they are perceived as highly arrogant. That arrogance actively cancels out the benefits of their projected confidence, resulting in a net zero gain in raw romantic attractiveness. Yet, overconfidence remains a highly successful strategy in specific contexts. It persists because it leverages a hidden evolutionary variable: intersexual competitor deterrence. We can visualize this dynamic using an agent-based model. This node network represents a simulated singles mixer, with a central target surrounded by multiple competitors all attempting to secure a connection. When the overconfidence trait is increased in a specific competitor, two metrics rise simultaneously. The green bar indicates an increase in perceived confidence, while the red bar logs a severe spike in arrogance. While that arrogance fails to attract the target, it succeeds brilliantly as a deterrence mechanic. It creates a highly unpleasant environment, generating a repulsion radius that actively drives rival competitors away from the table. Overconfidence optimizes reproductive success by aggressively clearing the field. It replaces internal desirability with an external repulsion radius, ensuring the target has fewer competing options to choose from. The human mating market effectively rewards two distinct strategies. On one side, we have the genuine biological signals of the sociometer, built on genetic resources. On the other, the aggressive, competitive deterrence of the overconfident actor. But pseudo-confidence extracts a heavy long-term cost. While a manufactured repulsion radius can temporarily isolate a target and clear out competitors, it completely lacks the underlying psychological resources required to maintain the relationship once the initial competition ends. The evolutionary math favors the genuine signal. True confidence proves that an individual's physical appearance, genetic stress response, and social standing have all been strictly audited and verified by their own internal systems. Confidence is undeniably attractive because it provides high-fidelity data in a market defined by hidden information. At a biological and psychological level, it is simply too expensive to fake for long.
Do you have any ideas for my next video? Just write them down in the comments below, and I will explain it in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.